Evan's phone lit up at midnight with a message from Lena claiming she wrecked his car and blamed him to get insurance money. He stared at the screen, feeling the room shrink as her words twisted guilt and confidence into something unsettling. A cold instinct pushed him toward the dashcam app he had almost forgotten he installed months earlier. When the footage loaded, the truth unfolded in harsh clarity, shattering every excuse Lena had sent him moments before. Evan felt his pulse slow, not with panic, but with the certainty that this night would change everything. Evan replayed the dash cam footage from the beginning, letting every second reveal what Lena tried to hide. The first clip showed her stumbling out of a bar, laughing too loudly as her friends pushed the door open for her. She waved a bottle in the air, bragging about being able to drive better drunk than most people sober. Her words hit Evan like a slap, cold and careless in a way he had never fully noticed before. The camera angle shifted as she dropped into the driver's seat, fumbling for the keys with a sloppy grin. Music blasted the moment the engine turned on, shaking the speakers and drowning out her friend's warnings. Lena revved the car twice, shouting that she felt untouchable tonight as the tires screeched out of the parking lot. Evan watched the speedometer climb faster than his heartbeat, digits jumping in a blur as the city lights stretched past. She pushed the car to 90, then 95, leaning forward like she was racing herself into some invisible victory. Her laughter grew sharper, cutting through the audio like broken glass scattering across pavement. At one point, she took both hands off the wheel, raising them like a dare to anyone watching. The car swayed hard to the left, missing a guardrail by inches before she jerked the wheel back with a curse. Evan felt his stomach twist as the footage continued without slowing, without remorse, without a single sign of control. Lena bragged to her passenger that she could thread a needle at 100 miles per hour. Her passenger begged her to stop, voice trembling, begging her to pull over and switch seats. Lena only laughed harder, calling him dramatic and telling him to enjoy the ride or get out. Traffic grew heavier as they approached an intersection, lights reflecting off the windshield in frantic patterns. A minivan appeared ahead, signaling a lane change with calm predictability that made Evan's chest tighten. Lena accelerated instead of slowing, muttering that she wouldn't let some slow grandma box her in. With a sharp flick of her wrist, she cut directly in front of the minivan, leaving no room for reaction. The impact came instantly, metal twisting in a violent spin as both vehicles veered across the asphalt. Airbags exploded in a cloud of white, muffling Lena's scream as the dash cam shook violently. The car hit the curb and stopped, frame hissing with smoke and leaking coolant. For a moment there was silence, only Lena's ragged breathing filling the microphone. Then her voice shifted, calculating, rehearsing lies even before checking if anyone was hurt. She muttered that she would blame the minivan driver, claim she had been sideswiped without warning. She looked into the mirror and forced tears, practicing the tone she would use for the police. Evan paused the footage, staring at the frozen frame of the woman he thought he knew. Every detail burned into his mind, transforming suspicion into unshakable certainty. He saved 3 copies of the video, each one proof that Lena had crafted her own downfall. Nothing she said, in her midnight message, could erase what the camera had already captured. And Evan knew this was only the beginning. Evan sat in his living room with the lights off, letting the glow of the screen guide his next move. He knew confronting Lena directly would only lead to manipulation, excuses, and more twisted lies. She had already rewritten the story in her mind, convincing herself that deception was harmless if it benefited her. Evan opened a secure folder on his laptop and uploaded the full dash cam footage without a moment of hesitation. He attached a concise statement and sent everything to the Insurance Fraud Investigation Unit. The file transfer bar crawled slowly, each percent reminding him that truth sometimes moved painfully, deliberately. When the confirmation email arrived, he exhaled for the first time since watching the crash unfold in real time. He then drafted a separate report addressed to local law enforcement, detailing Lena's intoxication and reckless behavior. He included timestamps, GPS data, and still frames that clearly showed her holding a bottle behind the wheel. His hands shook slightly as he pressed send, but the feeling wasn't fear, it was resolve. Evan knew that the victim in the minivan deserved more than silence and buried evidence. He searched for the woman's insurance provider and found the claim number listed in a public database. He called the company, explaining calmly that he possessed crucial footage contradicting Lena's false statements. The agent on the line paused, stunned, and asked him to upload everything to their secured portal. Evan complied, adding a note urging them to ensure the injured woman received immediate support. When the files were submitted, a quiet heaviness settled around him like a final confirmation. Lena was out there celebrating, posting photos, as if life had handed her a reward instead of a warning. Her social media stories showed her laughing with friends, bragging about her lucky escape and pending payout. Evan scrolled through the clips, watching her perform a version of herself that never acknowledged consequences. He felt detached, as if observing a stranger instead of someone he once trusted and loved. Every boast she made online only sharpened his understanding of how deeply she believed her own lies. She talked about buying new clothes, upgrading her apartment, and taking a weekend trip with the insurance money. In one post, she joked about milking the system, unaware her words were building a case against her. Evan captured screenshots, preserving the digital trail that revealed her mindset after the crash. He sent these to investigators as well, letting her own words paint the portrait she tried to hide. Hours passed, but Evan remained calm, steady, driven by the responsibility she had abandoned. He double-checked backups of the footage, storing copies on separate drives and a cloud account. He knew Lena might try to twist the narrative once authorities approached her, but evidence was immovable. Truth didn't need to argue, it simply needed to be seen. By the time he closed his laptop, the silence in the room felt different, no longer heavy, but clean. Lena's storyline was collapsing, and she didn't even realize the ground beneath her was already gone. The knock on Evan's door came early in the morning, sharp and insistent. He opened it to see uniformed officers, standing with a warrant in hand. Lena was sitting on the couch behind them, crying, her face pale and streaked with mascara. She shouted that this was all Evan's fault, that he had trapped her for no reason. The officers ignored her protests, explaining calmly that she was under arrest for multiple charges. Evan stepped aside, letting them enter and begin the paperwork while he remained silent. Her friends appeared at the door next, shouting and waving phones in his face, accusing him of betrayal. He didn't respond, keeping his eyes on the officers as they cataloged evidence in the apartment. Her mother arrived shortly after, frantic and angry, blaming him for ruining her daughter's life. Evan listened, but said nothing, knowing any argument would only delay the process. The officers read her Miranda rights, and Lena continued to protest, claiming she was a victim. She tried to grab Evan's arm, tears turning into threats, promising retaliation once she got out. Evan stayed calm, stepping back, letting the law enforce what words could not. Her arrest papers listed DUI causing injury, insurance fraud, and false reporting among the charges. The officers escorted her to the patrol car while she screamed for Evan to explain everything. Her friends shouted at him from the sidewalk, calling him a liar and a manipulator. Evan ignored them, his focus on the evidence safely stored on multiple devices at home. He knew that what she had done was already documented in timestamps, dashcam footage, and social media posts. The victim, Mrs. Lee, arrived at the police station shortly after, shaken but thankful that the truth was coming out. She identified Lena and confirmed the events from her perspective, adding weight to the case. Lena's confidence collapsed as investigators cross-referenced statements with video and GPS data. Every lie she had spun unraveled under the scrutiny of official records, and eyewitness accounts. Evan received a call from the insurance investigator, thanking him for his meticulous documentation. They confirmed that the $30,000 payout had been frozen, pending further investigation. Lena continued to protest, but her lawyers could do little with the concrete, irrefutable evidence. Even her attempts to manipulate the story online failed. Screenshots of her posts were already filed with authorities. Her family became divided, with her father acknowledging their mistakes and supporting Evan quietly. He admitted they had spoiled her, enabling the reckless behavior that led to this moment. The police collected all devices, evidence bags filled with phone records, flash drives, and hard drives. Evan watched as the final steps of the arrest concluded, knowing justice had begun its process. Lena was taken into custody, handcuffed, and driven away while her world of freedom collapsed around her. Her mother cried out in frustration, still trying to protect her, but the damage was undeniable. Evan remained standing on the porch, calm and composed, knowing that truth had been preserved. The dash cam footage, screenshots, and reports had done their job. The law would now handle the rest. No threats, no excuses, no lies could change what had already been captured and verified. The first chapter of consequences had begun, and Lena could no longer control the story. Evan closed the door slowly, feeling a quiet relief that justice had started its course. Within days, Lena was back in custody after violating her bail conditions, leaving her shocked and helpless. Her mother shouted at Evan repeatedly, insisting he had ruined everything and demanding explanations. Her father, Mr. Dalton, stayed silent for a moment, then spoke with calm authority, siding quietly with Evan. He admitted their family had spoiled Lena, giving her freedom without accountability for years. Evan documented the interaction carefully, noting the shift in family support and dynamics. Meanwhile, multiple civil suits arrived at Lena's address, demanding compensation for damages she had caused. Hospitals billed for medical care, insurance companies filed claims, and the minivan driver demanded restitution. Evan kept detailed records of all notifications, preparing to submit them to the investigators and courts. Lena tried to post online, spinning her narrative as if she were the victim of a conspiracy. She claimed Evan had set her up, that the world was against her, and that she was misunderstood. Screenshots captured each post, freezing her attempts to manipulate public perception in real time. Each post contradicted verified evidence, timestamps, and eyewitness statements from the accident scene. The civil claims quickly accumulated, surpassing $160,000 in total demands against her personally. Lena grew frantic, realizing the financial and legal consequences were beyond her control. She tried calling Evan, sending texts, and leaving voice messages pleading for him to help her. He remained silent, letting the authorities and legal system handle the situation without interference. Her father warned her privately about facing reality, while her mother continued to defend her publicly. The tensions split the household, leaving Lena increasingly isolated as her claims of innocence faltered. Every attempt to sway friends or bystanders failed, because the evidence was too overwhelming to deny. Police reports, dash cam footage, GPS data, and eyewitness accounts formed an unbreakable chain of proof. Lena's social media, once her platform for boasting, became a record of her recklessness and deceit. Her posts flaunting money, speed, and immunity were now exhibits for investigators and civil courts. Friends who initially supported her began distancing themselves, unwilling to be associated with criminal activity. She attempted to bribe or threaten individuals, but each action was documented and added to her legal troubles. Evan maintained copies of every message, post, and phone call, ready to submit as evidence if necessary. The consequences of her actions were no longer theoretical. They were immediate, tangible, and growing. Each day in custody reminded her that control had slipped entirely from her hands. Civil suits continued to pile on, each demanding accountability for reckless driving, injury, and fraud. Lena's attempts to manipulate the narrative fell flat in the face of corroborated testimony from Mrs. Lee and witnesses. She cried, screamed, and posted online, but none of it reversed the mounting legal and financial consequences. Her father quietly urged acceptance, her mother argued in vain, and Evan observed from a distance. Every lie she had told unraveled piece by piece, exposing the full scope of her actions. By the end of the week, Lena's social circle, finances, and family support had fractured almost entirely. Evan realized the storm was far from over, but the first waves had dismantled her carefully constructed illusions. She had entered the situation confident, reckless, and unafraid, but reality had already caught up. Every decision she made had contributed to her downfall, and the consequences were only intensifying. Evan remained composed, knowing he had done everything possible to protect the innocent and let justice take its course. The courtroom was packed as Lena's trial began, tension thick in the air and cameras recording every moment. Her attorney argued that Evan had staged the entire accident, claiming the dash cam footage was manipulated. Evan remained calm, letting the evidence speak for itself, confident in the accuracy of every frame. The prosecution presented the dash cam footage, timestamps, and GPS data without hesitation. Every speed, every turn, every reckless maneuver was visible and undeniable on the large screen. Eyewitnesses were called, starting with Alexis and Tyler, friends who had been in the car that night. They confirmed Lena's intoxication, boasting, and deliberate actions leading up to the crash. Mrs. Lee, the minivan driver, testified calmly, recounting the accident and Lena's dangerous behavior. Her voice shook at times, but her account was consistent, precise, and corroborated by the footage. The prosecution also displayed Lena's social media posts, highlighting her boasts about speed and insurance money. Each post contradicted her claims of being a victim, painting a clear picture of recklessness and deceit. The judge allowed evidence from previous incidents of DUI and reckless behavior, establishing a pattern. Lena's attorney tried to argue that the dash cam was tampered with, presenting supposed inconsistencies. The prosecution countered with metadata, file integrity checks, and expert testimony confirming authenticity. Evan watched silently, feeling the weight of every second captured proving Lena's guilt. Cross-examination revealed Lena's repeated attempts to mislead authorities and manipulate witnesses. She denied responsibility, claimed memory gaps, and insisted the crash was an unavoidable accident. The jury listened intently as the evidence stacked against her, showing clear intentional recklessness. Even Lena's own friends testified, reluctantly confirming that she had boasted about outdriving everyone. The combination of eyewitness testimony, video evidence, and social media posts left little room for doubt. Lena grew visibly frustrated, realizing the defense's arguments were collapsing under factual scrutiny. The prosecution emphasized that this was not just a single reckless act, but a series of deliberate choices. Every lie she had told, every attempt to evade responsibility, was documented and undeniable. The jury asked detailed questions about timestamps, speeds, and the consistency of witness statements. Experts confirmed that the dash cam had not been edited and that Lena's claims were false. Throughout the trial, Evan's presence was calm but firm, his preparation meticulous and thorough. He remained composed as Lena's outbursts were recorded and added to the official record. Her credibility eroded with each cross-examination, leaving her isolated and exposed in court. The final arguments highlighted the harm caused to Mrs. Lee, the insurance fraud, and public deception. The judge reminded the jury of the seriousness of DUI, fraud, and false reporting, emphasizing accountability. After deliberation, the jury returned a verdict quickly, unanimous and decisive. Lena was found guilty on all counts, the evidence overwhelming and her defenses dismantled. She sat in disbelief as the foreperson read each guilty count aloud, the reality of consequences settling in. Her attorney attempted to salvage hope, but the courtroom atmosphere left no room for leniency. Evan exhaled quietly, relief and validation washing over him as justice had been affirmed. The trial concluded with Lena's actions fully documented, her guilt established beyond doubt, and accountability ensured. The sentencing day arrived with a tense, heavy atmosphere in the courtroom. Lena sat silently, her expression a mixture of anger, disbelief, and fear. The judge began by outlining the severity of her crimes, emphasizing the recklessness and deceit involved. DUI causing injury, insurance fraud, and false reporting carried serious penalties, all justified by the evidence. The judge sentenced her to 2.5 years in prison, making it clear that public safety had been compromised. She would also serve 3 years of supervised probation after release, with strict conditions to follow. Her driver's license was revoked for 10 years, reflecting the court's concern for future risk. Financial penalties were imposed, totaling $163,000 USD, covering damages, medical costs, and insurance restitution. The civil lawsuits added additional pressure, confirming the wide-reaching impact of her actions. Evan sat quietly in the back, relief and exhaustion mixing in his chest as the sentence was read aloud. Lena attempted to argue, claiming she was being unfairly punished, but the judge remained firm and unmoved. Her lawyers made last-minute pleas, but the verdict and sentence were final, leaving little room for appeal. Her family reacted differently. Her mother sobbed, still protective, while her father nodded silently, accepting reality. Lena's social media accounts were already under scrutiny, her attempts at public sympathy ignored and documented. The courtroom staff ensured that all evidence and records were properly filed for future enforcement. Evan observed each step, noting the accountability finally being enforced after months of chaos. Lena was taken into custody immediately, handcuffed, and guided out of the courtroom without incident. Her attempts to blame others or manipulate perceptions ended as she entered the legal system fully constrained. The financial repercussions were immediate, with frozen accounts and pending payments enforcing responsibility. Evan felt a quiet closure knowing the truth had prevailed, and those harmed were acknowledged. He knew the road ahead would still have challenges, but justice had established accountability. Lena's reputation, career, and social life were irreparably damaged, her public image shattered. Every friend who once supported her distanced themselves, unwilling to risk association with criminal behavior. Her family faced scrutiny as well, with legal and financial obligations reflecting their role in enabling her actions. Evan received partial compensation through insurance, enough to recover some losses and start anew. He bought a new car and installed a dash cam immediately, unwilling to repeat the mistake of unverified trust. Lena's letters from prison attempted to manipulate, apologize, or provoke guilt, but Evan ignored each one. Her words had lost power. The evidence and the law had already determined her fate. Months later, Evan reflected on the ordeal, realizing the dash cam had been his most vital safeguard. He understood that documenting reality, staying calm, and relying on facts had preserved justice. Lena's actions had consequences she could not escape, proving that reckless behavior carries weight. Evan moved forward cautiously, but confidently, knowing he had done everything possible to ensure truth prevailed. The courtroom, evidence, and sentencing had delivered the closure necessary to reclaim stability in his life. Lena's downfall was complete, a stark lesson in accountability, deception, and the cost of ignoring responsibility. Evan's trust in preparation, foresight, and diligence had been validated, marking a new chapter of cautious vigilance. Justice had been served, consequences enforced, and truth made undeniably clear for everyone involved. Evan drove his new car carefully, dash cam installed and recording every mile he traveled. The accident, trial, and aftermath remained fresh in his mind, a constant reminder of vigilance. Partial insurance compensation helped replace what was lost, though it could never erase the ordeal. He received occasional letters from Lena, full of manipulation, false apologies, and attempts at guilt. He ignored them all, knowing her words were meaningless compared to documented truth. Lena's life had changed irrevocably, her freedom, reputation, and finances irreparably damaged. Even her family faced consequences, unable to shield her from responsibility any longer. Evan reflected on the chaos, realizing the dash cam had been his most valuable investment. It had captured every lie, every reckless act, and every moment of her deception. He finally felt a measure of closure, knowing justice had been served and the innocent protected. Friends and acquaintances, who once doubted him, now understood the importance of evidence and vigilance. He continued cautiously, aware that trust must be earned and documented in today's world. Evan smiled faintly, realizing he had survived the storm unbroken and wiser than before. The dash cam blinked silently on the dashboard, a small guardian that had changed everything. He knew one thing for certain: truth always finds a way, and preparation can turn it into justice.